Guess we're here now. Hi. So I'm Cassandra Marks. I'm a realtor up in the Pacific Northwest in Washington and Oregon, and I love living up here. And I am joined today by my friend Caroline. She is located
Hi.
down in the Bay Area of Northern California. Why don't you give us a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm Caroline Hobbs. I've been selling homes in the Bay Area for longer than I care to admit. I've had a lot of clients move between the Pacific Northwest and the Bay Area. It's very similar as far as jobs, culture, and everything. So I think that's why we're filming this today, is to kind of help introduce people who might be looking at making a move between the two states, and show them some of the things what they may like and other things to take in consideration as they are researching a move.
Yeah, there is so many similarities between the two, between Washington and like even Oregon and Northern California. Like the three areas themselves are very, even though they're different states, there's so many similarities when it comes to why people move between the two of them. And I think the biggest one that I've come across, and I wonder if you have too, is that lifestyle of it. It's the same. Like there's so much shared lifestyle between everyone on the West Coast, especially like the northern portion of the West Coast. What have you kind of seen when you've talked to people?
Absolutely. I mean, taking a look at how people spend their time off, even coming down to a lot of the businesses and things like that that drive our economies, are very similar. We have a lot of farmland in Northern California, and of course, the wine industry, which I know you guys have a lot of that agricultural influence up there as well.
Absolutely. For people like I haven't told you guys yet, I am a farmer. And like right next the field right next to my house, they hay it for this little animal called Curly the camel. So I mean there's tons of agriculture up here, but like also if you're looking for wine, the Willamette Valley or even out in Eastern Washington, like Tri-Cities, I mean, some of the
Mhm.
best wine I've had in a long, long time. And like at one point, my husband, I was like, "Hey, can we go to the Tri-Cities?" And he goes there quite a bit for work. And he's like, "Why do you want to go to the Tri-Cities?" I'm like, "Have you actually paid attention to like when you go out there?" I'm like, so as we're like driving into town, I'm like, wine, wine grapes, wine grapes, wine grapes, wine grape for miles. So
Yeah, I love that.
there's so many
My
similarities between the two.
One of my best videos on YouTube is actually a parody that I made. Morgan Hill is about 7 miles south of San Jose, and we have 38 wineries in town. And so I, joked about some of the cons of moving down a little bit outside of the city into the suburbs and talked about things like traffic and whatnot. And I was like, but don't worry, there's a wine for that. And slipped in the name of a local vineyard.
I love that. I love it. I do love me a good bottle of wine from time to time. But outside of like just, agriculture and wine and stuff, other things, I mean, people just like generally love nature between the two
Of
areas.
course.
We've got a bunch of mountains that are really close. So you can go to Mount Hood and enjoy activities like skiing and snowboarding and that kind of thing you can get there about 90 minutes from Vancouver, or which is where I'm located. Otherwise, there's Mount Rainier. There's the Olympics up on the peninsula on the eastern side of or the western side of Washington. Um, there's just so much beauty with forests and hiking. And then depending upon where you're located, if you're like on the western side of the state, it's maybe 60 to 90 minutes to get to the ocean, depending upon where you're living. And there's so many great activities to do at the coast. Like people love getting away there on the weekends. So I feel like it's pretty much, fairly similar for you guys. I feel like you're a little bit closer to the coast than we are. But I mean, the proximity to the mountains, I mean, you guys probably can drive up to Tahoe. We were just talking about Yosemite.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the natural beauty is so big, and it's such a huge part of like the culture. It's almost it would be hard to live in this area and not want to go, hike up the trail or something and see the views from the top of one of the mountains. Silicon Valley is literally a valley between Mount Hamilton and the Santa Cruz Mountains. And so you can hike up on both sides. It's absolutely beautiful.
So it sounds like, depending upon where you're living, California or Washington, you're getting a lot of the same things.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
also it sounds like too, like fairly similarly outside of, that outdoors centered, that living that we've got both going on here. I think the other thing too is like I feel you already mentioned it about Morgan Hill kind of being out of town. There's that urban versus rural balance. So it
Of
really,
course.
even if you're like decide to go and be up in the Seattle area, like you can drive an hour east and be right in the mountains.
Hmm.
Maybe like even like depending on traffic, like maybe 45 minutes and you can be into farmland. So
Yeah.
it just really depends where you're at. If you're in Eastern Washington, you're going to be in farmland all the time. Spokane's a great big little city. Tri-Cities is pretty good. Vancouver also, like Vancouver, Portland area. You're always kind of feeling that quick jump to the rural living when you want it. But you also have
What type
all the
of
amenities.
clients? What type of clients and like what's important to your clients about living in the city versus living in more of a rural area?
Um, so I get a lot of people when they do relocate, they're like, "Hey, I want to be in Southwest Washington." And the choice to be in Southwest Washington, which we can get into for other reasons down the line too, obviously financial reasons, but they like Southwest Washington because it's still like you have access to all the city amenities. You have the access to, the city of Portland, all the dining, all the food. I mean, even downtown Vancouver is getting a lot of that, but also like living rurally, you're not living on top of each other right away. You have a little bit bigger lots, a little bit more space, the neighborhoods seem a little bit more like they don't seem as buzzy when you're like
Yeah.
in a city where there's just like go, 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 go. It's like it just kind of the pace slows down. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for these days is to slow
Yeah.
down their pace of life. I remember going to Italy and was like, what? They close everything for lunch? Like I feel like America is so like let's go, but when people are moving up here, they are looking for more of that, usually looking for more of that like let's relax, let's slow down, let's spend time with our families.
Most people, when you think of the Bay Area, you think of San Francisco, you think of Oakland and San Jose.
That's
And
about it,
those are
yeah.
certainly, yeah, those are certainly our largest cities. But I wouldn't call them like our most popular areas that people come and move down to. Downtown areas, they don't traditionally have the highest rated schools or anything like that. There's definitely more crime. Most of the families that I see relocating down here are looking more in areas like Mountain View or Sunnyvale. Um, San Jose has some really nice pockets where they're more family friendly than others.
Mhm.
And then there's Morgan Hill, which is just south of San Jose. That's more of like a little bit of country living where you get a lot of larger lots, more nature, again, the vineyards, things like that. But then there's also some developing communities in the East Bay where a lot of families have started kind of moving out a little bit. But thankfully, we have the train system that goes down either side of the bay. So you can go between San Francisco, San Jose, and Oakland all pretty easily.
Well, and then like geography wise, if I understand, I think I understand a little bit about the Bay Area. You guys are pretty much like kind of tucked in with some mountains too, right? So like expansion is a
Yep.
little bit difficult. So it kind of your options are maybe like moving south further because if you go east, it's just mountains. So like the expansion of the city is into those rural areas, and that's the further you get out, the more affordable it gets, and so it's just kind of like a natural, I think, progression. And that's a lot of what's going on in
Absolutely.
Washington too.
Yeah, and in California, just because we did have some dry years a few years ago, fire insurance is a really big concern that a lot of buyers have when moving into those mountain communities. We still see a lot of people making a move into them, but it's definitely a consideration. And then also, like in the East Bay, um, the San Andreas Fault Line.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
something that always makes people a little bit nervous. So there are some extra inspections that we do and things like that, just to kind of cover all of our bases with properties out there and, making sure that everybody's protected.
I didn't even think about that because we don't really like, I don't want to say we don't get earthquakes up here because we do. They're just very tiny. Like, I
Yeah.
still to this day, knock on wood, have not actually experienced
Uh-huh.
and realized I was experiencing an earthquake. So, it'll be interesting when that
Most of the
happens.
time, it's like, yeah, most of the time, it's honestly like nothing to be concerned about. And personally, if like I was going to be comparing it to like a hurricane or a tornado or something, where you have hours and hours of stress before it ever happens, I mean, an earthquake happens and then it's done. And so it's like you can't prepare for it. There's no use, stressing over it. And I can honestly count, like on one hand, the number of times where I've seen things get like knocked over or come off the wall or something. Um, so it like in general, it's nothing to be too worried about, at
Yeah,
least my experience.
yeah. Up here, it's like we don't really have that. They talk a lot about like the big one happening like off the coast of Oregon and Washington. Like there's a big fault line out there, which would
Yeah.
cause like tsunamis and stuff like that. But I mean, when it comes ultimately, I think maybe that one connects down to the San Andreas. I'm not sure, but like there's not really
Yeah.
much for the shaking going on. Although we do have volcanoes. We do have,
Volcanoes.
yeah.
What?
Mount St. Helens blew in the
Oh,
80s.
okay.
So there's Mount St.
Okay.
Helens, like Mount Hood is also like a dormant slash mediocrely active volcano. Like, I mean, like there's shakes and stuff that go on there. They've been monitoring quite a bit of what's been going on in St. Helens and Rainier recently, saying that St. Helens
So
has
does
had a
that mean
lot.
you have hot springs?
We do. There are hot
Ooh,
springs. There are natural ones and there are regular, like there's like resort style ones as well. Honestly, some of my favorite hot springs actually aren't even in Washington. They're in Idaho. Idaho has a ton. So it's a really fun drive.
really?
And yeah, about 6 hours from the Vancouver area, and you can get into Boise and be close to all that, or you can drive up to Coeur d'Alene, like Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, in about 6 hours as well. So there's ample opportunity for things like that.
I've never been, but it's on my bucket list.
Okay. Well, we'll have to get you to one. But there's a few in Oregon that I really enjoy. We went to one called Umpqua. It was down south
Mhm.
by Crater Lake. And you have to hike about a half a mile in from the trailhead. And it's like up on
Mhm.
this big like side of this cliff face, and there's a bunch of little ponds and stuff. And you can climb down to
Uh-huh.
different ponds at different temperatures. And it's
Oh
it's
my God.
100% natural. They like put like a little shed up there so you can change if you want, but most people just like change in the woods.
That's awesome. It's like
So
a nice little reward after a hike.
absolutely, absolutely. The other thing, outside of like hiking and like natural activities, I think a lot of commonalities between the Pacific Northwest and San Francisco, like the Bay Area and Northern California,
Mhm.
has got to be like that coffee and that food culture. Because I feel like every time I visit the Bay Area, it's like always like, oh, what cool restaurant or what cool coffee place, or like, don't go there, go here. And so, and
Yeah,
it's really similar up here. There's so much foodie culture, I feel like up and down like the northern part of the West Coast. What
totally.
what is one of your favorite coffee shops? And you can't say Starbucks.
Okay, easy. Phil's is a local chain, and Coffee Lovers Unite. They have opened a number of stores throughout the Bay Area and have started selling it in grocery stores and whatnot, which makes it more accessible. But they are a local coffee brand that is absolutely amazing. So
That's cool. Yeah. Obviously,
I'll
like
have
I
to
feel
send you
like
some beans.
I feel like I can say Starbucks because it was started in Seattle, but
Yeah.
ultimately, actually, there's a really cool place just down the street from here. Well,
Hmm.
for some reason, that's called Gold Cup. I love that place. It's just like a little one-off mom and pop spot. But in the
Yep.
Pacific Northwest, and I don't know, do you guys have Dutch Bros
We
in?
do okay. So we
I
don't
still
have
don't
any.
understand what the popularity is about Dutch Bros, but someone kind of told me the other day, and I don't know if I believe it.
It's just a lot of sugar.
So I think Dutch Bros was originally from Utah,
Uh-huh.
and it is, I believe, an LDS owned company or whoever the runner is, and they don't really do a lot of coffee. So that's why they have a lot of other like energy drinks and pop drinks and different types of drinks to cater
Ah,
to that side of things. And
that
I
community.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I've gotten a lot of different things from there. I don't do
Yeah.
energy drinks, but I don't understand. Like there's a line at Dutch Bros every time I drive by until like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, I do not understand.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, no, we don't, I don't live close enough to one to like be that familiar with it, but I've definitely seen them. Um, but to me, it was more of like a, you know how like the Vietnamese style coffee is like sweeter. They
Hmm.
use that condensed milk. It like that's what I think of when I think of Dutch Bros is like a really sweet coffee.
Yeah, it's got a lot of sugar. Whatever like sweeteners or pumps that sugars they're putting in, it is very sweet. But I've got to
Yeah.
say like there's easily like here you can drive around and people think it's a little weird, but in the Pacific
Mhm.
Northwest, a lot of them have like these little, they're drive-through only, and they're like little tiny house like
Mhm.
pop-up shacks where you can drive through on
Yes,
both
yes.
sides with windows and get like a drink
Uh-huh.
and pastries. Like they're all over the Pacific Northwest. But like originally coming from the Midwest, like from Minnesota, I'd never seen something like that before. And I was like, what? I'm like, what? Why is there just like a line of cars next to that little shack?
So Wiener Schnitzel is like notorious for this. Do you guys have Wiener Schnitzel?
No.
Okay, well, it's a
I
hot
mean,
dog fast food.
I mean, it's German, but yeah,
Yeah. So Wiener Schnitzel is like a fast food chain, and their stores are all like that. At least like the original ones,
they're just like
where
little
they're
cart, like they're like little drive-through carts.
like a
Like,
little exactly.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I had never
Yeah.
seen anything like that until I'd moved to the Pacific Northwest, and I was just like, that's just so weird. But I mean, it works. It's great. So now I have,
Yeah.
whenever I drive around, when I'm driving up to Seattle or driving out to the beach or whatever, there's like little stands. I'm like, I really like this stand or I really like this place and they're always
Totally.
the like cute little cart ones. And then, oh no, do I want to bring it up? Do you guys have bikini baristas?
I know of a couple places up in like Vacaville, and
Okay.
Sacramento area,
I was just
but
curious. We have them. They're
yeah,
around. I was just curious if like they had
yeah.
made their way that far south.
Not quite into the Bay Area.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that, you know, the Bay Area in particular is such a mixing pot of cultures.
Hmm.
Like we have people from everywhere in the world, you know,
Yeah.
um, because there's such a large number of high-paying jobs. And so we bring in, you know, the best of the best to come and take these engineering jobs. And so I don't think it would line up culturally with a large bit of our population,
Yeah. I think
you know?
I think you find them more in the like the more rural areas. Like there's not one in downtown Vancouver or downtown Portland, but like when I drive
Yeah.
out towards like the beach or the farmland, there's always one or two around sometimes. But there's a
I
lot of
mean, you got to keep these farmers occupied.
there's a lot of these carts too that I've found recently too, is that they're women owned. Like just rent like all these like food shops. So like Washington as a whole has a lot
Uh-huh.
of women run businesses.
That's
And so
amazing.
as I go around and meet and go to like different restaurants and different places, like all the like little local breweries and stuff, I find out, oh, it's, family owned, third generation, or it's woman owned. And like they tend to promote that quite a bit up here, is like
Hmm.
they try to keep it small and not so much of like the big boxy stuff, which I
Yeah,
really, really like because they do that. Like there's that. And then that, like, I think we've talked a little bit about like kind of the farm to table movement, which is very popular up here as
absolutely.
well.
Yeah,
And I think that that between the two areas being, very that rural kind of that urban rural balance, so you're gonna have that farmland, the wine, the cows, the agriculture. You're gonna get that great farmers market, that farm to table style food. Do you guys have a lot of those actual style restaurants in your area?
we do. There's like a handful of them. I think that we probably don't have quite as many as you do. But for example, there is a local wine family, and he's actually opening a hotel, and he has this restaurant that became very, very popular during COVID. And then he moved it over here. It's called Mohai. And everything's seasonal. And actually, one of the things I enjoy about living in the suburbs, um, they sell fresh eggs. They sell unfiltered milk, straight from the cow.
Yeah.
There's always like fresh sunflowers and things like that, also from the farm that's being sold. So we do have a lot of those little like country stores that sell custom spice mixes and hot sauces and things like that. And then, yeah, I mean, lots of bespoke restaurants where they're one off and have their own little niche kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think
I love that type of
me,
stuff. I'm so much not like the big box person. I recently discovered this really cute place called The Cove, and we went there for our anniversary dinner, my husband and I did. And just like they were just so open about, kind of where they source their food, what they do. And like, and as a farmer myself, I take great pride. Like I farm specifically because I want to know where my food is coming from. And that's what a lot of people enjoy up
yeah,
here in Washington is the farmers markets are always bustling. There's people always wanting to
yep,
support local farmers, and like farming is not easy. Like it is not
no,
easy. It is not like as lucrative. Like people are like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "Dude, I work really hard." And I'm like, "Cool, look at my paycheck." Um
yeah,
and it's sometimes rewarding in different ways. Like I teaching sustainability, teaching gardening, teaching canning, like actual like life skills that I feel like have been lost for so many years. And I do believe that a lot of what's happened in the last few years for everybody as a whole, like has brought people kind of back to realizing that like I want to know where my food's coming from. I want to know that my food is good, that the farmers that are providing it or the people that are providing it are doing it sustainably, that they're not adding all these extra stuff. And I really think we're going to see a huge push for that going forward, not only
I
just in
agree.
our between our two areas, but also like nationwide. And so
Yeah.
it's refreshing to see that because I've even talked like my husband grew up eating everything from the grocery store and I grew
Hmm.
up eating everything from the farm. And when I
Hmm.
had to switch over to eating everything from the grocery store when we left the farm, it was weird. And
Yeah.
so it just like the lettuce doesn't have the same taste, the chicken doesn't have the same taste, like the eggs don't, like everybody I talk to is like your egg yolks, because I do deliver eggs to people. They're like, your egg yolks
Uh-huh.
are so orange, not yellow, orange.
Yeah.
And I said, well,
I
it
have three chicken.
it depends what you feed them. It really does. My mom loves
Yeah.
to give them all of my mom will go and pick all the slugs and snails and stuff and feed the chickens, and all that
Hmm.
protein makes the chickens yolks so much more golden.
Yep. We give
But
them rubs and stuff, and I let them free range.
yep.
And every year I get a whole bag of worms and sprinkle them out and let them continue to do their job.
And isn't it fun having chickens?
I love that. We have a very, very cute sign on ours. It says the Fluffy Butt Hut on it.
Oh, I love that.
But I love my girls. I will say there was one I was particularly bonded with, but again, since I'm a little bit in the country, she got eaten by a hawk.
That's
So
the other thing though. Like, I mean, living rurally, like that, those types of things do happen. It is part of the life cycle. It's unfortunate when it's usually your favorite chicken. Um,
yeah, yeah.
we also lost one of our favorite chickens recently. And we don't really know why. We think she got into a fight with another chicken in the coop, but it's a great life. I love that kind of thing. And I think with that, not only are we having the food culture and then like that rural life, but also like I think the work-life balance between the two areas.
Hmm.
You've got that high tech going on. There's a lot of that coming up here, obviously, in Washington. There's tons of different tech jobs available all the way across. You got Boeing and Microsoft. So you're getting a lot of those style of people. There's also other like up and coming companies like Zoom Info. So a lot of those
Hmm.
companies are in the Washington area. And, they are allowing for that flexible work options where you can work from home a few days a week or whatever. And so I think that
What does
lifestyle
that look
is
like? What does that look like for your clients that work from home a few days a week?
so a lot like with that, since I'm located in Vancouver, a lot of people, if they work 3 days a week at home and 2 days in the office, a lot of the times, honestly, the office is Oregon. But because they work three
Okay.
days, because there's like a little mini Silicon Valley with a bunch of tech, including Intel over in on the west side of Portland, Intel, Nike, all that kind of.
Uh-huh.
They if they work from home in Vancouver 3 days a week, they get the tax benefits of Washington. And so as
Hmm.
long as they're more than 50% on the Washington side, they're able to do that. Then I have other clients that actually I have one client that was commuting between the Bay Area and Southwest Washington because they had been told they only needed to be in the office 1 day a week. And so they were
Uh-huh.
literally commuting on their own dime to live up here in Washington and then just flying down to the Bay for 1 day a week. And it's because it's an easy flight.
Yeah.
She did it for like 2.5 years. And then
Yeah.
eventually was like, okay, my kids are getting older. I want to spend more time with them going and doing their activities. And she chose a change of employment. But I mean, ultimately, it was very easy for them. So a lot of people are able to commute up and down the West Coast. Or I know some people, I have one client that lives here in Southwest Washington, and they take the train up to Seattle
Hmm.
every other week for 2 days. So they'll go up, they'll go, and
Yeah.
it's like 3 hours on the train, I think, to go up to Seattle, maybe 3.5 to get to downtown. And that whole time they
Hmm.
can work. It's like an Amtrak style train. They can work the whole way up there. It's commutes back and forth pretty quickly. And
Uh-huh.
work up, go up. They stay at a hotel for like 1 night or 2 nights and then hop the train and come back down. And it's very doable for work. When it comes to like just work-life balance in general, people have
Hmm.
definitely with the rural lifestyle, they're balancing other things like taking care of their chickens, taking care of their gardens. So people are
Yeah.
getting here and they want to get more involved in the gardening. So their work has been like, okay, hey, at like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I'm done. It's not like check your
Yeah.
email, be on everything till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, go to sleep, start up and start it over. People have definitely been able to kind of take advantage of the more relaxing nature of living in Washington.
Yeah. For us, oftentimes at these tech companies, they're in office 3 days and then work from home. So there's definitely a noticeable difference on the freeway on Mondays and Fridays versus Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, are
Um,
those the days they're working? Is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
exactly. So it's kind of like the middle block of the week, but it opens it up. So, if you do have a light Monday or a light Friday and you're looking to travel or go to a place out of town, it makes it easy. But I was going to ask you also, like, we've seen a lot of growth in our suburb communities since COVID. Like, for example, Morgan Hill has actually grown about 25% in the last 5 years,
Wow.
which is pretty huge. So what kind of have you guys seen similar kind of trends with your suburbs, or are
Yeah,
people still flocking to different cities?
I see a lot of people trying to like I've seen the a lot of people moving out of the cities. So I feel like it's about every 10 years we kind of get this outflux influx. And I feel like the
Uh-huh.
outflux kind of started from the cities kind of when the pandemic happened in 2020. Everybody was looking for more space and like room to work from home. And so like everybody started moving to the suburbs. And depending upon where you live, like if you live down in my area in Vancouver and Portland, they have the urban growth area, which they don't allow development to happen outside of certain boundaries. And then they reassess those
Uh-huh.
boundaries every so many years, which a new one's coming in 2025. And I'm trying to keep my house out of the urban growth area, my farm.
Uh-huh.
But like up in Seattle and stuff, like they have some um, you know, restrictions on building, but usually like that's where you kind of get that urban sprawl is when you don't have that urban
Mhm.
growth area. The other challenge with an urban growth area where you say you can't build outside of something is typically like your housing prices go up a little bit more. But like Southwest
Yep.
Washington is very um small it's still growing. I mean, I say it's small, but I think like the Vancouver area has about 200,000 people in it in Clark County. So it's
Oh,
not like it's not huge. It's considered a suburb of Portland, even though we're
wow.
on the Washington side of the river. But we're not seeing these just like huge sprawling neighborhoods in our area where you're seeing more of that up in like the Seattle area. I think Spokane's like spreads out quite a bit more because they don't have that like urban growth area quite as much. So
Yeah.
it's
Unfortunately, the state of California a few years ago, they actually had a bill in place where if something is zoned for residential, you can essentially build whatever you want on it. And so what's happened, especially in these fast-growing communities, is we're seeing a lot of townhouses going up with the three-level living.
yep.
And that's kind of become the trend, especially for first-time home buyers, which is unfortunate because I mean, I have young kids, so like I could not imagine going up and down those stairs with groceries or a diaper bag or,
No.
any of those things on a regular basis every single time you're trying to get up to your house.
No. And like I
Do you
kind of
guys
just
out of that?
I know what townhouses you're talking about. Like we have some of those style here. They're
Mm-hmm.
not nearly as like prevalent as other areas. And the bill that
Uh-huh.
you're talking about for California, they did something similar in Oregon where they're just like highest and
Ah,
best use, whatever you want to put on it. I'm like residential
yeah.
zoning's like gone.
Wow.
So
So for
it's
us, like the only way that we're able to control our growth at this point, um, is keeping land under county jurisdiction versus under city jurisdiction.
okay.
Because once it comes into the city, that's when it gets zoned and like the zoning laws change. So for county, you can build one home per 20 acres versus in the city, if it's zoned residential, it's like the builders are no longer finding the value in building single family homes the way that they used to, which is
Yeah.
really unfortunate because that is really what I think most people are looking for. I don't think it's natural for us to all live, stuff together in one area.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that is starting to happen a little bit more up here in Washington. I know that Portland has done a lot of the east side of Portland, so Portland Circle, downtown Portland, there's a river, the Willamette River. Everything on the east side is very like grid city, like compact, older.
Yeah.
West side is more developments, housing developments, like large scale tract homes, that kind of thing, more like suburban. But on the east
Yeah.
side, they've done a lot of because it's the older section of town, they've done a lot of like of overlays and they're trying to like densify Portland. Well, now Clark
Mhm.
County in Vancouver has taken a lot of notes from Portland and it sounds like that's part of what they're going to be doing in their initiative 2025 and forward is to
Uh-huh.
maybe make more dense residential and get away from those larger lots.
Hmm.
The newer construction, a lot of them have very small lots. But the
Yeah.
older construction that you see built in the like well, not really 80s, the 90s, the 60s and the 70s, you're looking at like quarter acre on a lot of those. And even if they're in town. And so it's a little bit more, I guess, sad, but they're going to try to densify Vancouver more, which means that they're going to have to add more infrastructure, more public transportation, that more people are going to get crammed in there. But also, like, there's the other half of it where, I mean, and everyone faces this. Do you keep building out into farmland and taking away farmland? And like
Yeah.
where we produce our food and where we are able to provide for our community. And so that's definitely
Absolutely.
something that's it's a very hot topic here right now, is that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's all about balance, right? Um, so I know out here in the Bay Area, we've got Stanford, we've got Berkeley, we've got San Jose State, my personal alma mater,
Mhm.
UCSF, a lot of different really like top universities throughout the whole country. You guys also have University of Portland, University of Washington. Tell me about that and how that affects like your growth. And do a lot of those college students end up taking jobs locally, or do they tend to go elsewhere throughout the country?
So I think a lot with schooling, at least in like the Portland, Vancouver area, there are some universities, but they're not like super duper major. But a lot of these people, they come, they go to the schools and they get this more like adventurous worldly space. So then they go and they
Yeah.
travel, they relocate to some other location, and then they realize that they miss their homegrown roots and then they come back. And that's what a lot of
Right.
like of what goes on in the Pacific, like in our little niche of the Pacific Northwest, because it's not I've traveled a lot and I feel like there's not a lot of places that are like the Pacific Northwest. I think, every location has something different, but people just seem to gravitate back here because, of the lifestyle, because
Mhm.
people love the outdoors, people love the balance, people love urban versus rural, the food. It's just such a great mix of everything. Because when I grew up in Minnesota, yeah, we had the rural living, but like I felt like our food kind of sucked. Like it's not anything like it is out on the West Coast. Did we have a
Yeah.
lot of farming? Yeah, we did. Was there good, but did those farmers bring in good urban like, farmers markets and stuff? Not really. Like it's
Yeah.
such a like a community.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
I think that's why like the northern Pacific Northwest people return to it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I could definitely see that. What do you feel about the climate? Because like we were talking a lot about outdoor living and everything, and Washington is known for raining like 80% of the year. If
I don't
not,
know if
it's
it's
probably more
quite
than that.
80%, but so we talked we talked a little bit about it. I mean, yesterday water is an issue here. It can be. Where I'm located, a lot of the ground is a clay base, so the water doesn't soak in very well. So it runs a lot and sits and stands. It hangs out on the surface. I had some backing up on my farm yesterday, and today we've got warnings for something called a bomb cyclone, which is relatively similar to a hurricane but in cold water. So
Mhm.
hurricanes are warm water
Oh,
based,
boy.
cyclones are cold water based. And it's basically going to drive, somewhere between, depending upon where you're located, 70 to 80 mile an hour winds, torrential rain for
Wow.
days. Like some cities are looking at probably 2.5 inches in 24 hours. And the other kind of thing they call them sometimes too, other than like this one's rotating, so that's why they call it a bomb cyclone. But there's also just like they Pineapple Express or atmospheric rivers where it literally just is it comes from
Yes.
Hawaii and just rains. And like you guys get those
Yes.
too.
We get
Um
those too. And it's like you can literally see it will be dry and you can see the clouds move across and just be the
just
sheets of
drench
water coming
everything. You're
down.
like, "Oh, there comes the rain."
Yes,
So like
exactly.
as we sit
Oh,
here, I like stare outside. I'm like,
fuck.
"Is it raining yet?" We actually had
Yeah.
sleet yesterday.
Oh, it's that cold up there right now.
Yeah. It's been about, fluctuating between around 40, a little less than 40, top 30, like upper 30s. Um,
During the day.
yeah.
That's like our nighttime where I'm like, my husband goes running in the morning and I'm always like, oh, no way. It's way too cold out there.
Yeah, now that you say that, I really want to check and see. So, the high today is 46 and the low is 36. And that
Okay.
is
So you're
very
about
common.
yeah, we're about 60. We're in the 60s today for sure.
The 40s
But
through
it was
most of the winter
definitely,
is very common.
yeah,
40s and
yeah.
rain every day.
You know, there's give and take, I like when we visited Dallas. Dallas is a great area, but for me, it's all like man-made beauty. I don't see as much of like the hills and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so when I go to areas like that, I miss it like so much.
Mhm.
So I think everywhere has its own charm.
Well, and I feel like Northern California area, like you still have, like, I've been to the Redwoods, beautiful. Like the Bay
Mhm.
Area has tons of trees, still has like the mountains and like the landscapes. And I think that you're going to progressively still see that as you move further north. And because you guys get the rain that you get, and because we get the rain we get, you get the greenness, you get the lushness. You get fairly similar when it comes to that. I mean, yeah, we get colder. Yes, we get snow. We don't get a lot of snow. It snows like maybe 3 days. At least where I'm located, it's like maybe 3 days, 4 days a year. Like you'll get like one
Oh, that's
snowstorm.
it.
That's it. I
That's
mean,
kind of nice. So it's like you have the fun, You get to enjoy it, but you don't have the everyday hassle.
No. So like you'll look on the news. It's kind of like California too, where you look on the news and you're like, oh, um, snow is above 2,000 feet. So you're like, okay, who lives in the foothills that's above 2,000 feet? And like when you're driving out of town, like I'm on the flats. I think I'm at about
Yeah.
a 300 elevation. But when
Hmm.
I mean, it's always on the news, like here, the passes, this, at this level, this is where the snow's at. But typically, you don't see snow more than a couple days a year below 1,000 feet.
Very nice.
So you just
Yeah,
drive
we
to Mount Hood or you drive to Rainier or you drive out into the Cascades or the Olympics and you can get snow. But usually like in town anywhere, at least in Western Washington. In Eastern Washington out by Spokane and stuff, since it's more dry climate, deserty out there and little more arid, it gets
uh-huh.
colder, but their cold is not a wet cold like Western Washington. It's a dry cold like the desert. So
Okay.
it's a little bit like once you go over the Cascades and start exiting out into like eastern Washington, the elevation gains. You're going to have snow on the ground year round out, or not year round, all winter there. But your
Hmm.
cold is going to be dry, so it's going to feel different.
Yeah.
So like I don't know if you go to like
I'm
top,
used to a lot more of that dry climate
yeah,
because it's although like we don't get any of the humidity or anything that I think you guys can sometimes get with that extra moisture.
yeah.
Um, but certainly both of us are much better off than those in the South.
Well, and I think the
When
other
it,
thing is like I over dramatize how much rain we get. We really don't get, it's like a very light drizzle every single day. That's why this comes in handy quite a bit because
yeah,
then it keeps the rain off my hair and off my head, but it's not like it's not pouring every day. Like
yeah,
don't let us like drive you the wrong way. We have a few days where it does pour, but it's like quick, it's done. It might be a little bit more here and there, but like ultimately most of the days that we have rain in the Pacific Northwest,
yeah.
it's like this just like drizzle. So everyone just wears jackets and puts heads up. So don't
Now,
be
is it common with like the work-life balance and everything like that? Do you guys have a lot of vacation? Like, do people go and have like a second property like closer to the water or anything like that? For short getaways? And where do they do?
absolutely. So a lot of people love going to the coast. Like it doesn't
Mhm.
matter where on the coast. There's so many beautiful places on like almost the whole Oregon coast is absolutely gorgeous. And the Washington coast is very beautiful. People can go out to like the Long Beach area, which is in the southwest corner of Washington. And then when you go up to some of the other places about mid-level Washington, if you come straight from Seattle straight across, you're going to go through Aberdeen and you're going to go into Ocean Beach. Ocean Beach doesn't really
Uh-huh.
allow rentals. So you're not
Oh,
going to find a
okay.
lot of vacation rentals out there, but you'll have more affordable home prices. To buy a second home in there, you're still like looking in the like three to $400,000 range to get like a three-bedroom house, but you can't rent it.
Okay.
I mean, at least short term, under 30 days. And then if you go a little
Hmm.
bit further north, there's this really ritzy community that I absolutely love. It's called Seabrook,
Uh-huh.
and it is like the community has everything that you need. There's got biking
Hmm.
paths, walking paths. There's all these just really cute, beautiful, and they're not little, big houses.
Uh-huh.
And the whole neighborhood is vacation rentals. Like it can be, I mean, there are permanent residents, but like every house in that community, there's probably a couple hundred. They all can
Oh,
be
wow.
rented. It's a master plan community, so it has all sorts of different like I think there's a pool up there. There's different activities. It's fairly similar. A lot of people in California know about Bend, Oregon, or and just south of there,
Mhm.
which is Sun River. So Sun River is
Uh-huh.
like the central desert version of Seabrook, where it's like
Okay.
you have all the activities, all the amenities that you need. You don't need to leave the city. And so a lot of people will
Mhm.
go out there to like rent or they own something out there, but tons of people have second homes, pretty close to the water, like a place to get away, whether it's, some of them are in the mountains, but a lot of people love going to the beach, regardless of if it's raining or not, because it's just
Yeah,
so beautiful.
totally. We
Do you, what about you guys? Do you
we
guys like, I mean, it feels like you guys are so close to the water, so you'd probably have more mountainous getaways, right?
It's actually a mix of both because so Santa Cruz is very close. It's about 35 minutes to go over the hill into
Mhm.
Silicon Valley. So we do have a lot of people that actually will commute from Santa Cruz into the valley for work. But yes, there are so many amazing mountain communities around us. Those are also really popular, as well as like Carmel, Monterey, Half Moon Bay, areas like that, are also just a short ride down the street and, known to be some of the most beautiful places in the entire world.
Yeah.
So we're really, really fortunate to be, a stone's throw from Lake Tahoe and Yosemite, and then, places like Carmel and Big Sur. So
Nice.
we definitely see a lot of vacation rentals in all of those areas and a lot of second homes.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I love the beach. And I have done Tahoe. I eventually I've never been into Santa Cruz, so it's definitely something that I would love to check out because surfing, beach life, I love seeing it in different
When you come to
locations.
visit, yeah, absolutely.
So not only do we have like all the outdoor living and activities too, but I think there's a lot of similarities between like just arts and culture in general. Not only do we have a lot of, those lifestyle, all that kind of stuff, but I think also with the fact that you guys live in an area where the flights are direct in and out of the country, like you have quite a few of them into multiple
Yeah,
areas. I think that gives you like this huge
international.
cultural mixing pot where I think a
Mhm,
lot of, at least in like the Portland, Vancouver area, we don't have as many like direct international flights as you do. So we don't have
mhm,
necessarily that huge culture in itself, but we do have a rather large like Polynesian culture. So like we have a really good attachment to like the Hawaiian Islands. And so you get a lot of like the
mhm,
island culture up here and a lot of people commuting back and forth. Whereas like if you're up in the Seattle area with the tech jobs and the direct flights into SeaTac, you're kind of going to have that same like vibe as
similar.
Northern
Yeah.
California. But it just depends what you're looking for. I think do you guys have a lot like what kind of like what are some of like the fun things that you guys enjoy arts and culture wise down there?
You know, because we're such a melting pot, there's so many festivals and things like that to celebrate all the different cultures. Um, I know personally, I sponsored a Diwali event for the South County Indian community this
Love that.
past weekend, which was so much fun. We got to dress up and have amazing food and watch some absolutely beautiful performances. But then there's also several Lunar New Year events that will be going on throughout January for like the Chinese culture. And we have lots of different Oktoberfest celebrations. One thing I really love about the Bay Area is although we are like three major cities, um, oftentimes there's smaller cities with like a smaller kind of downtown area, which are more or less just like a block with great restaurants and shops and things like that.
Mhm.
But they're also used for festivals throughout the year. So most communities will have at least one or two big things that they throw every year. And you kind of can jump around and everything's within, 45 minutes to an hour of one another. So it makes it pretty easy to venture.
Yeah, I love that like being able to kind of get into the culture. So like in Vancouver, they have 4 days of Aloha. It's like a 4 day celebration. You get to go and try the food, and there's hula dancing and like traditional dancing and fire. And I mean, it's just so cool. And it's like one of the coolest festivals. I mean, there's tons of other festivals in music and arts,
Yeah.
Jazz and Wine Festival. They have October is like Dine the Couve month. You get to
Mhm.
run around and try all these different things, or you can hop over. Actually, one of my favorite weeks is Dumpling Week in Portland.
Oh,
And they have a website and there's all these different restaurants like and it's not just like Asian culture. It's like I went to an Italian place and they had dumplings. They had Italian style dumplings. It was so good. So like you go and you
I
kind of
love those fusion foods.
yeah, so you we would that whole week I planned meetings every single lunch with people and we would go and try different dumplings and like sometimes I'd be like I'd be, hey, we're gonna go get dumplings. And like it was like with a realtor who I really enjoyed. But then like sometimes I'll just take a client and be like, oh, let's go try this restaurant. And I'm like, yeah, get dumplings. And so it's kind of like a quiet thing. I'm like, ooh. But
Okay.
I mean,
Have you ever
overall,
had,
like,
I have to ask, since you like these fusion dumplings, have you ever had Indian pizza?
no, and it sounds delicious.
It is delicious.
Oh,
So
I'm gonna have to
when
look
you come
around and
out
see if I can find some.
yes, it's like they do like a butter chicken pizza, and it is,
That,
you'll love it.
there's not too
I
many foods I
I
don't
like the
like,
chicken tikka.
so that sounds delicious.
Yeah.
But I think also too, like, not only is there like these great like food and art, like that, like the culture like winds into the food. And I think that's what like really makes our areas like everything just binds together. It's not just
Yeah.
like, oh, we have a great art and culture scene. No, like we have great art and culture, great food, great community. Like I didn't feel that necessarily as much in the other locations. Like I lived in Denver. It was just like, okay. I grew up in Minneapolis. Okay. I mean, I went to school in Iowa. Okay. Like it just didn't quite have the vibe and like the like full like immersive arts culture, all that kind of stuff. I mean, artistic communities. You go around Vancouver, they have a website dedicated to all the murals that are all over the buildings in Vancouver, and like it's like a walking tour. And like some of them are
Yeah.
absolutely stunning, and some of them have very large significance in things that have happened in Vancouver's history. Because
Mhm.
Fort Vancouver and a lot of like the first move with the Lewis and Clark coming through here and stuff like that. So like it's all it's all immersive when you move into like the Washington area. And I feel like the few times that I have visited the Bay Area and that it's just the similarities just now that the more we talk about it, the similarities and that makes sense why so many people want to migrate between the two.
Well, honestly, I think it's all of those things. It's the land, it's the restaurants, it's the entertainment, it's the outdoor activities. This is what makes a community special and unique. And I think that, the more people that lean into loving the area and giving back to the community and whatnot, just further helps build it.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think like that's just a great way to like wrap up this entire hour that we just spent talking because it is such an amazing space between the
Mm,
two, the lifestyle, the just everything. I love it.
absolutely.
And so if you are, I mean, if you found some of this information like good and you've got more questions about moving between the two areas, we've got a lot more videos coming up. Lifestyles is not the only one we're going to be talking about. We're going to go into the financial reasons between the two. We're going to go into schools. We'll talk more about housing prices. So we've got a lot more to come. But we hopefully you got some good information out of this, and we can bring you more value here as we move forward.
Thanks for joining.
Bye.